There's been this meme going around, especially on LinkedIn. This not this meme, but this topic, this discussion around the revenue per employee. And Microsoft is like 1.1 million per employee, and Google is 1.7 million, and Meta's 2 million, and Apple's 2.4 million per employee. Netflix is making 2.6 million per employee. Craigslist is making 13.9 million per employee. And wait for it, OnlyFans is making $30.1 million per employee. And I thought this was really, really interesting, not because of the current numbers, although that is interesting because, if you don't know, OnlyFans is basically a glorified kind of porn site for independent creators that are, a little bit more risque. But I think what's interesting is this concentration of revenue generation, this value creation per employee is going to become a key metric to watch, especially as people start getting synthetic colleagues. One of the first things we said on one of the first episodes of this show, this format, the Reacts format, is there was going to be $1 billion company with 3 employees. I think Ben Parr said that on the show. And that was reposted by Jeremiah Ouyang, who was also on the show. He posted that on LinkedIn and it went viral. It went like millions of people were looking at it. And it has been since repeated by Sam Altman and others. And I think we can safely take credit for seeding that conversation. I think with something like O1, the direction that O1 is pointing at with the agentic work that we're seeing with Amir, what you just said of a synthetic colleague, I think we're going to start looking at revenue per employee metrics. And I think the North Star here is like 3, 4, 5. My personal perspective on this was an executive team. So 1 person per function, maybe 5 or 7, and the rest are synthetic employees. I think that is a fairly reasonable place you could imagine a company going. Jordan, what do you reckon? Is this fantasy land or is this
No.
so far into the distance that it's not relevant, or is this something we could see in the next, let's say, 10 years?
I absolutely think we'll see it in the next 10 years. And I just I can't help myself. I want to understand the Venn diagram of this audience that doesn't know who Michael Arrington is and also doesn't know what OnlyFans is. That feels like a tiny wedge of something. But to the concept of this, I mean, like, yeah, I absolutely think it's doable. I mean, like, I've been pitched half a dozen minimum companies that are thinking about creating these synthetic, it's like it takes a bunch of different forms. There's marketplace form where you like hire them out. They're contractors. You got like a Fiverr vibe going on. There's others that are like in-house. You can train them. You can select them. They're working 24/7, whatever it might be. Some services oriented models that we're going to hang out over here at this business. And then we're going to come back to the peg and we're going to hang out over it and, we'll productize it over time. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. We even have a portfolio company that part of their tagline and their pitch is we're going to empower the first 1-person unicorn, right? So I think all of that is perfectly within reach. And I think there's already stuff out there. I mean, like, we have a portfolio company that's in a crowded space, competitive. It's called Sketch, but there's a bunch of other ones that are doing basically EA functionality minus the, hey, by the way, it's your mom's birthday, remember to order flowers thing. But all of the actual scheduling stuff, I wouldn't call it solved, but I would say we're like 95% solved on like a very tedious, laborious thing. So perfectly within the realm. I also have to say, before tossing over to Amir, that I think the OnlyFans revenue per employee is unfair because there's quite a bit of labor happening there.
Yes.
Just like, I mean, what would we do with Uber?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
would we call Uber's revenue per employee? Would we include all the millions of drivers, or would we just talk about the folks over at HQ? The last bit that I'll say is character AI. I don't know the exact stats. I mean, maybe we can put them in post or something, but it's like a relatively small amount of employees for a very high. And I know it wasn't like technically an exit. It was a very unique deal that happened with licensing and hiring and whatever they had to do, whatever voodoo.
I think it was a corporate raid or something.
Whatever, like, no antitrust voodoo juju that they had to do. Great. They did it. But that was a high, not revenue, but high value per employee situation as well. So I think AI does it in many ways. It does it via allowing there to be fewer employees, but it also does it in that these AI native companies are going to, by their very nature, have fewer employees because they are dog fooding and employing different workflows and able to stand things up. We have companies right now that are, like beating the hell out of Cursor. They're just like, they're going crazy with Cursor. Like they're moving 10x faster, because they're just like doing edits and fill in the blanks and things like that. So yeah, I think it's coming.
I totally agree with Jordan. I think this is happening. I think we talked about this in a previous episode, but like there is a model like this. It's called Google. In Google, every Googler has an army of vendors that they manage, and their only job is to say whether the vendor work was googly enough. So this has been tested in the last 10 years of Googlers managing other people's jobs and managing outcomes, especially in marketing, where like you have marketing person from Google managing event vendors and brand vendors and all of these type of vendors. So I think the model is there and it works. And the interesting part about that is that the pricing model changes. So when I'm talking to startups and I'm talking to them about what's called the ACV, the average contract value or annual contract value, they're actually anchoring it to a cost of an employee. So if I'm selling a support agent that is a synthetic human, I ask the customer, how much are you paying today for a support agent? And that's the anchor for selling that software. And that's very, very interesting because that ties into your point about how much am I paying for this employee versus how much money am I getting from that. So I think we're going to see more and more synthetic employees where the average contract value is not seat-based or value-based. It's basically how can I replace someone who I'm paying a lot of money for someone who I might be paying less for.
Wow.
There's a lot of upheaval around pricing right now with regards to all of this stuff. And I don't know that like lopping off benefits will like actually end up being the pricing for this stuff. But I've seen a lot of the same support based agent type thing that you're talking about in like tickets cleared, but they're running tickets 24/7 because they have no reason to stop. Right.
Exactly.
And so you can pay per ticket cleared. You're moving a lot faster, but it doesn't feel, it's going to be interesting. I would love to talk at some point about like what we're seeing with pricing because it's very nuanced.
And it's revolutionizing everything else because all the rest are like seat-based. And if we are talking about software in general, like all SaaS software is based on seat-based. And now we're going to see less and less seats. To your point, Jordan, and your point, Chris, or like the one seat company that is $1 trillion, it has one seat. So how do you sell to that company?
Right.
If your entire business model is seat-based.
There's so much interesting stuff for founders to take away from this. So the first thing is, Jordan, you rattled off these companies that you're seeing that are pitching you, and you rattled off like 4, 5, 7 flavors of the same business, but positioned in a different way. And I wanted to repeat that because, this show is as much about educating founders as it is about talking about the news. And one of the things we talk about sometimes on this show is this idea of like, oh, we're in stealth or our idea is secret and we don't want to tell anyone our idea. People miss the trick that there are 17 ways of building the same idea. 17,000 ways, really, when you think about different niches and markets and ecosystems. And so just with this idea of like AI as labor, you just rattled off a few different variations, right? Like a services business with a heavy use of AI in the back end, or an AI agent with a heavy use of humans in the back end, or productized AI little agents that you can just click and deploy, or custom AI where we'll come in and create custom employees for you, or an AI marketplace where it's like a Fiverr or Upwork. I just want to point that out to founders listening that your idea is not unique. Your execution and your choices and your positioning and your product UX and your mental model, that's where the unique thing is. I just wanted to make that point. The other thing you guys talked about is business model innovation. So we talk a lot on this show about the idea that new fundamental platform shifts reshuffle the deck about winners and losers. And partly it's because of these new flavors. What are the flavors of the native version of this business? But it's partly because of business model shifts. And here we're talking about moving from paying per seats or paying freemium or paying incremental SaaS fees. We're talking about charging for labor like in orders of magnitude of labor or work done by an agent. These is like really interesting experiments that are occurring that it shows you how deep the platform shift goes. It's not just in UI and UX and products, in business model. And again, choosing a business model is one of those differentiators. There will be 17,000 different ways of doing the same thing, and some combination of these things is going to work for some combination of markets, for some combination of use cases. And so that's the opportunity for founders and investors listening here.